It's a birthday, 57, and I feel wonderful. My life isn't perfect, but I'm going to share with you today about, on my birthday, a new solar return, I turned 57. Okay? Now, to talk about how to age gracefully, wonderful, we're a go. It's my birthday today, my Earth Strong, my born day. I'm 57. I'm very happy to be alive. I'm very thankful. I'm a wise woman. And in that, I want to be able to age gracefully. Age, if you look it up in the dictionary, first of all, you should always, when you're exploring a subject, really look at the etymology of a word. It's about moving closer and closer to death, okay? And everything in the Bible, which has many of our original stories in those books, but you're really writing this story within yourself, and the choices and the daily habits that you make determine if you will age gracefully or not, and how will you exit. All right, so what we think of as old age today really was never considered old age. 57 would still be considered really a baby in the scheme of things, meaning that, if Noah and many of the people in the Bible lived into 904 or 5 years, and many recent Chinese have lived 360 years in India, all over the world, who've chosen to have different daily habits. Some of these habits for me was I chose never to bring a microwave into my home. I chose never to put sunscreen on my skin. And I chose to get rid of my television in 1985. None of those were super easy choices to make, because if you consider the time period within which I made them, they weren't popular choices to make. That's right when everyone started getting DirecTV and all of the channels and shows started to become, much more, we had much more of a selection to choose from. So that was the time when people were enjoying more TV and more selection. And these are choices that you make for good reason. Okay, like I chose not to smoke cigarettes. I chose not to drink alcohol for the last 30 years because it's destructive to the glands, the organs, and especially the liver. Okay, it's destructive to the mood, and therefore it's destructive to our personal energy. So, aging, an era, becoming old. But what's really interesting is if you look in the dictionary and you Google it right now online about age definition, you're going to see very clearly that it says to become obsolescent. Now break that down into syllables. Take a look at the word sound there, right? And it becomes very obvious. Look at what we're doing in consumer marketing, okay? Talk to anyone who's had multiple refrigerators and washers and dryers and computers, and they'll say, I really think they're making them obsolescent now, where, they're set to expire within just a couple of years. So the same thing is true with humans. Because of our daily habits, the way that we live, how busy we are, we're not aging as gracefully, and we end up taking a medicated exit through a hospital bed, an assisted living, a nursing center, a hospice. Not to put anybody down, but I think we've got ways to prevent that. So, to age is not just to become old, and that's just not a negative thing. It's also not to become inflexible and starch stiff and have to ride in a cart, necessarily, with no disrespect again. But it's to be able to move with grace. So let's now examine, because we looked at age, let's look at the word grace. Grace is to have an attractive presence, if you look it up in the dictionary, okay? We all know what grace is. We all know that none of us perfect grace, absolutely none of us. And in fact, when I'm doing my coaching work, it's often a guilt or a shame that comes up, which has also come up in myself, yelling at my son, having my expectations, and they're more heightened, aren't they, around your birthday? Around Christmas, around the holidays, that we have expectations built in our mind. I found myself feeling that way again even last night. Why would you do this to me, right? So grace becomes an understanding that maybe they're not doing it to you. Maybe they're not doing it to you at all. And then you have to lay down, be quiet, and develop presence and authenticity to be able to look at what you're truly doing, how you're truly reacting to something, and you develop a better and better, stronger ability to be present and authentic and move with grace. So to age gracefully is to become an elder and move with an attractive presence, to move with thankfulness, to develop your equanimity by your 9th moon, age 63, your sacred wise woman or wise man moon, okay? And all of these things on my blog, in my coaching, I kind of put under my movement. That's my manners and respect, my presence and authenticity, my ability to age gracefully, my movement, okay? How I move. So, can I keep it cool even when anyone else would perhaps not be cool? Well, I'm constantly working on that, and that's a facet of maturity, okay? So let's move into some of the better things, okay? How do you get to having good daily habits and practices? Because that is number one when it comes to how to age gracefully, okay? Well, we develop our movement, our authenticity, and our presence, okay? And we know that we have a moon cycle. Women have a moon cycle that comes once a month between the maiden, the mother, and the crone, the triple goddess period. But we also have moon cycles of life, which are every 7 years. And this is talked about in TCM, traditional Chinese medicine. And if the skeleton, the brain, and the body has pronounced changes every 7 years, it also has potential for regeneration in 7 years. You can regenerate many bones, but that's not really well known or talked about so much in modern medicine today, in allopathic medicine. Okay, here's some of our habits that I find to be particularly resonant with aging gracefully. Sleep. This is something that's really been forgotten. And we want to get our pack, our household, those of our chosen and biologic family, to overstand and understand that just like the dogs, the animals, and original humanity, when it became dark, we would lay down. And that would be the time we would enrich the hormones that are made under the darkness. And when it became light, we would rise. And we would take some time to digest where we were plugged into the darkness, to recharge ourselves, remember our dreams, our visions, look up any symbologies, any animal spirits and totems. And this is a practice that we would develop and we would teach to the youngers. We would impart this with them into their living waters, okay? You are about 72% water and about 28% minerals. You're about 65% oxygen. And so, you need, and everyone needs to learn what's not being taught in the schools and which is not being really shared with all of our people because of the separation of removing our people into institutions today called schools, which have given us many good things too. But it has removed the ability to learn these daily habits by taking our people away from mother and away from home and hearth. So now mother has become more and more disabled, ill, sick, and disenfranchised from really being the primary teacher of her youth. Okay? She would be teaching the word sound, the medicine, how to care and feed the self, how to sprout and grow the seeds, how to recycle everything that we use. She would be doing the storytelling from the mouth about all of the multiple generations in our family. But now we are losing because we do not have that. We believe that a centralized institution can give us more or better. And I don't think that's the truth. I think there's room for us to come back to home and hearth. Our diet, a plant-based diet, which doesn't comport for everyone. They don't all feel inclined to do this. But nonetheless, the plant-based diet eases the burden on our digestion and our elimination. The plant-based diet makes it so that when the next habit, cosmic feeding, cosmic radiation, solar feeding, getting out in the sunlight, which is another habit, and you'll even see doctors saying, 10 minutes of getting out in the sun every day so you can get your vitamin D. Well, what you're really doing is activating a corticosteroid in the body, which has been called vitamin D, which a beautiful man, Jim Stevenson, really give me the fullness of overstanding, is not a vitamin at all. And you make it, cause it to move by getting out in the sunlight. But if your body is congested and congealed and toxic from eating meat, eating animals and lots of starch, food chemicals, lots of genetically modified food, then the body's not going to receive the keratin and make keratinocytes and thus make melanocytes from melanin. And it's not going to be able to produce skin melanin so that your response to being out in the sun is to tan. So folks that are more toxic are going to pink, redden, and burn. They're going to produce melanoma. They're going to produce skin lesions. And they're going to be the type of consumer who's going to gravitate towards sunscreen when that was the wrong thing to do. Sunscreen is the wrong thing, especially to put on young children. But with these habits, keeping yourself detoxed, keeping yourself in minerals and water, clean water, you're going to be able to go out and enjoy the sun with reasonable certainty that you're not going to burn. Okay? The other thing is, in place of the shower that we've all become so accustomed to, in an ideal world, in an ideal setting, and many people have this and many people don't, is we would sauna or steam. Now, when I lived in Santa Cruz for many, many years, I could go to 24-hour fitness any time of day and go into a magnificent steam room, and I would bring my son in and we would really eucalyptus steam, and that would open all the pores in our body and really take good care of us so we could very briefly shower, because most of us are showering under unfiltered water. And in order to age gracefully, we don't want all the exposure to the chlorine, fluoride, bromides, and everything that's going to be within the showering water or the bathing water. So ideally, if we could sauna and have a little sauna brush or some birch bark or something, we would be able to sauna or steam and lightly rinse off, jump into a river or a lake, and we wouldn't have to do the soap on the body's mantle all the time. But most of us were raised that cleanliness is next to godliness, and that we need to bathe and shower every single day, and that we need to make sure that we don't stink. And one of the reasons that we do stink or not smell so good, our urine, our bowel movements, our underarms, even our yoni, our vagina, doesn't smell so good, is because of what we're eating, what we're thinking, and the habits that we're keeping. The same thing that produces that smell is the same thing that's going to cause you to age not as gracefully. Now, we're all going to, end up aging and have sagging, some wrinkles, some frown lines, some stress. However, if the body can stay really flexible and you can keep a practice of yoga, even walking for free, getting up and really making sure you reach up nice and tall, stretch and release the tension out of the body and the breath by touching your toes, sitting down in some squats periodically, you're going to keep your hip flexors, your shoulders, you're going to keep yourself much more radiant and age much more gracefully. So your habits, the sleep cycles and waking cycles, the plant-based diet, and I think I'd written down here too, more prepared food, less cooked food. More prepared food would be opening up an orange, eating an apple, okay? Having some coleslaw, making a spiralized dish, a little tiny spaghetti for $9.95 that you could get at Walmart, and a nice little regular size zucchini, not the big ones in the garden. You'd have to cut that down. But you can twist that in the little spaghetti, and it'll make a nice bowl of noodles, and put whatever you want on the topping. A nice cold pressed hemp seed oil, some nutritional yeast flakes if you like that, some goji berries, some peanuts. You know, not everyone likes peanuts, and for good reason, and they kind of are a more toxic nut, but you've got other choices like raw macadamia nuts, like Brazil nuts, that are going to give you lots of selenium for your brain and help you with minerals that are a little harder to come by today. Brain minerals that are also going to help you to detoxify mercury from the brain, like selenium. Okay? So prepared foods, instead of saying, well, I got to go home and cook my dinner, you're going to go home and prepare your dinner, is another way to age gracefully, is to give the body the ease in your digestion of eating raw foods. Now you might say, wait a minute, raw foods aren't going to ease my digestion. Well, maybe that's because you've been eating cooked foods for so long that then it would be a little disruptive to your bowel until you get yourself detoxified a little bit. So that's okay. That'll happen too. I wrote down a nice little list of things I want to make sure that I covered today so that I didn't forget any of them. Today, when I'm doing the coaching, the executive level coaching work that I'm doing through naturallywithkaren.com, I book sessions with people for about 45 minutes apiece, and we go in, I ask questions, I gather. I'm helping people to regenerate, to prevent, to reverse disease, oftentimes to cure what is even considered the impossible. I've spoken before about kidney disease, lupus, autoimmune, thyroid. Infertility is not that difficult most of the time. Everyone has slightly different factors that are involved, and I consider each individual, and then I put together what I call an order of operations. So it's really like a math problem, okay? And I help you and be your guide, your coach, on a very executive level so we can do this. In doing this work for so many decades, I came to really understand how we age more gracefully by helping people regenerate. That's what brought me to being able to understand sulfur, silica, magnesium, the iodine, all of the things that are in my shop at naturallywithkaren.com. They have a place for each person based on their hair test, based on the symptoms they're producing, and sometimes when a woman starts prematurely aging in her face, in her body, it's her diet, it's her mineral imbalance, it's mineral derangement, it's heavy toxic metals. In doing this work, we can turn back the clock. We can even turn back graying hair to some extent, not for everyone. We can turn back the degeneration that caused infertility, sometimes Parkinson's, sometimes an early onset Alzheimer's. Although this isn't talked about, it's the same thing as aging gracefully. It's daily habits and putting together an order of operations, okay? So what we're really doing is developing an awareness, is what I've written down here. And we're also developing an awareness of our mind-body component. Our mind is extremely powerful, and not just in the way that you were taught with the law of attraction, but we are magnetic. We live in an electromagnetic environment. Our brain and our heart is electrical, and it funds just like the computer and just like the vehicle, and it needs certain things. It needs to have a mineral balance for it to work the best. When we stress it out, it's like we're revving the gas pedal too much, and the thyroid starts to get overstressed. It's like your thermostat. And eventually, it starts to produce more wrinkles on the face, much worse eyesight. It starts to push swelling out through the optic nerve, And then people start to have more swelling on their eyelids. They start to lose eyebrows, and they start to get more bags under their eyes. This comes from stress, and the thyroid is equally stressed. Okay? So aging gracefully means we want our glands, our organs, including the integumentary system, our skin, our digestion, our elimination, to work well. And they will do this with these positive daily habits and practices. Getting to bed a little earlier. And sometimes you can't do that if you're under stress. You've got a family member that's sick. You're the caregiver in the family. Maybe you've got to work extra shifts. Maybe you have got to work the graveyard shift for a little while at your job, or you're on a rotational shift. Do your best to get that extra magnesium and to get that extra sleep, even though you might have to sleep during the day. You want to age gracefully, keeping flexible and good habits, okay? The one thing I wanted to talk about in terms of our practices and habits that I do that I thought would really be nice for you is that when I go online and I see all of these wonderful skincare products, many of them are $25, $35, $75 and more dollars per small jar. And they are very beautiful to smell and have all of these, treatments on our face. But truth be told, in terms of aging gracefully, I wash my face with dirt. Okay? Now I don't just go out to the front yard and grab a handful of dirt. But I do have Redmond clay, the Aztec Indian mineral healing clay that you can pick up at most natural food stores, that you can even mix with just water or with apple cider vinegar and make a nice pore detoxifying mask. But you literally can, a couple of times a week or as strong, put a tiny bit, a couple quarters size in your palm, add your filtered water, mix it up, and then just kind of lightly scrub the face in a circular motion, okay? And allow it to dry on the face and take a warm washcloth. These clays, the Redmond clay, food grade clay, bentonite clay, the Aztec clay, I used this morning, I used up the last of the white European clay. There's many different kinds of clays, and you want to make sure they're not toxic with heavy metals and they are food grade, or they're a good quality. We'll give you everything that you need. You have the water, you have the minerals in the clay, and the clay is also exfoliating, and that really is all that you need. In terms of a moisturizer, especially during the winter time, what I have on now is what I make with just pure shea butter, cacao butter, and coconut oil. And I melt it down and I whip it up. I might add a little bit of lavender. I might add a little bit of sandalwood. Okay, but I can make my own facial product just doing that. And you want it to basically glide onto the skin and to sit on top of the skin, but not to be too caking, and using a little bit of water with it is going to help it to float on the skin. So you're not going to clog your skin that way. For people that believe that they break out with acne, that really is the inner body needing to detoxify, and then you'll be able to use, some of these creams, which are good for any age. I don't care if you're a young child all the way up to an advanced elder, they will all work for you really well. And they're simple, pure products with not more than 3 or 4 ingredients instead of the laundry list of 20 or 30 or 50 things on there where you can't even read the ingredients. Okay? Let's see what time we got, because we're going to go here for just a couple more minutes. I don't want to keep you too long. Okay? You want to age gracefully by knowing your ancestral memories, dream time, knowing your family, your family's memories. Okay? If 4 generations died of heart issues, well, we want to come inside and have some time to contemplate our ancestors and really think about, why did this happen? Were we just struck with this? Is it just that just our family has heart issues, or just our family has thyroid issues? just our family has diabetes. I don't think that's the case. In 34 years of helping people to regenerate to the best potential that they can, and I'm not in charge of anyone's absolute outcome because I'm not there every day to see what they're eating and what they're doing, but it sure is impressive when people put their mind to it and they put their habits and practices in place. Then we see profound results. We see cures. Okay? We see reversing disease for sure. We need to get in touch with the land we lived on. What memories are there? Our ancestors, what did they carry? Could we go and ask dad, mom, grandma, brothers, siblings, anyone, what do you remember? What are the stories? Without your stories, you're lost. Okay? In Africa, they refer to the Mzungu, one who's lost, the Mzungu. And we don't want to be lost here in America. We want to be still connected with these stories. We want to be connected with learning how to put these habits and practices in place. We can't do that if our younger people are being conditioned to think that they're just nocturnal or that's just what they like. We need to send a clear message that we don't want our people working swing shifts and grave shifts, graveyard shifts. We don't want to stay up all night. Some of the drugs, some of the thyroid conditions keep people up and awake all night, and it robs us. It robs us of our aging gracefully. It robs us of our health. It robs us of enjoying our good mood and our positivity. So aging gracefully also has to do with coming to know your ancestral stories, dream time. Okay. Lastly, there's the maiden, the mother, and the crone, or the wise woman. Some women get very offended by the word crone. I do not. I am happy to be a crone. I'm over 55, and in the modern world and society today, that's where you start getting your senior citizen discount. And I'm not so fond of senior citizen, but I do like elder. I'm not so fond of being called an old person, but I'm very fond of being called an older adult. Old, she's old. Old person, she's an older adult. You want to make sure that your word sound is still respectful, because then the respect translates from me to you, from you to me, and it starts to begin to create an infinity of balance, of manners and respect again. And we're all hungry for that. So we have the ability to age gracefully, to make sure our minerals are balanced, our daily habits are positive, to look at the stressors that we're going through and ask, is there something I could do differently so that I don't just interpret the stress as just, why are you doing it to me? That's been the case for me, or sometimes in my life, even until very recently, is to say, well, I accomplished this and this and this and this and this and this today. And it's overwhelming for people, especially people that really don't have that program running for them right now. For those of us that are elders, sometimes it's like that movie Idiocracy. We've been on the earth, in my case, 5 decades and 7 years. And I learned from my ancestors, grandmother, great-grandmothers, right? And I heard the stories, and I know a different way. And now the cell phones and the games and the gaming all the time and the short attention spans, more people with thyroid issues, more people accepting Western allopathic medicine where my family did not, can feel overwhelming. It starts to feel like people around you are much more rote. They go into these rote personalities and responses. Hey, yeah, you good? Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, Joe. I'm good too. All right. So we want to, the best of our ability, like I talked about me slamming the dryer or getting pissed off or having an expectation that someone does something for me that I expect. We need to do our best to communicate in a direct way what we want, make a request, keep it out of judgment language. Do the best we can. So I'm going to ask Anthony now if there's any questions, because I know I was going to go to 11. I guess there are no questions, but if you do have questions to this live stream, you can leave them down below, and I'll be happy to answer brief questions. And then, because you may be watching this a month from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, I want to thank you for joining me, whether it's live today or a year from now, celebrating my 57th birthday. I have been a healer for 34 years, and of course I didn't know 34 years ago what I know today. I started with Raw Foods for Reversing Disease with Pamela Masters, and what I had learned from the grandmothers and developing my intuition, and I added and added and added to it. Okay? So thank you very much for joining me on my 57th Earth Strong, meaning I'm strong upon the earth, the day I was born, my born day, and most people call it a birthday. I'm happy to be here. I'm thankful for life, and I'm going to continue to age gracefully and not perfectly. So I'll ask Anthony to go ahead and terminate us now, and I'll see you